How's Luka doing?
Well, pretty good according to Woj. I was thinking the worst. Obviously I'm sure everybody was watching him limp off the floor last night. And then mid-morning, Woj comes out and says there's optimism that he's just day-to-day. And to give people kind of an idea of what that could mean, well, the Mavs play tomorrow in Utah, and then they play on Monday against Detroit. And so getting him back for that Utah game would be pretty nice. And on the other side of that Pistons game, it's a whole lot more Western Conference playoff teams on the schedule. So the sooner the better. Tim Hardaway Jr. had a similar-looking ankle sprain recently and missed 5 days. And so if Luka can come back within 5 days or less, then that would mean pretty good things for the Mavs, because you want as many healthy guys, especially him specifically, as possible for these next couple weeks.
As long as Luke is out, can we expect to see a buttload more of Jaden Hardy?
Maybe. I thought he was going to play a lot more last night. He got in the game in the second quarter, played 5 minutes, and was okay. He shot 0 for 2, but the game was sort of chaotic in that time. It was actually Josh Green that played a lot more minutes, surprisingly. He was up like 32, 33 minutes last night, including playing down the stretch of the games, which is something that a lot of fans have wanted to see Jason Kidd do. Give Josh the leash to close out close games. And he did that last night, and without Christian Wood, too, they need more guys, and Green closed out that Wizards game as well. Unfortunately, they lost that one, but, last night they were able to pull it out. So, Jaden Hardy, I'm sure, is going to get more minutes at some point here, but Josh is still developing as well, and he's probably going to be profiting the most, as well as that could even mean, relatively speaking, without Luka.
Yeah, Bobby, I'm curious your thoughts on the development of Josh Green, because he looks like he's really kind of turned into a valuable piece here with the Mavs. Is he a guy now that it's, hey, you need to keep him, even if teams maybe at the trade deadline are looking at, all right, there's not a ton of assets that you have, maybe that's a guy we'd part with, to where the Mavs are like, no, he's a part of our future, we're not going to trade him?
Yeah, that's such a tough question, because I know a lot of fans want the Mavs to upgrade, right? Like the send Luka help mural and all that stuff. And typically, in order to do that, you got to give up picks and young guys. But how could you watch Josh Green play this season and not want to see him here for a really, really long time? Just every single one of his intangible traits, the energy, this controlled chaos, the athleticism, all of that stuff is super important. And now the tangible stuff, the measurables, the field goal percentage, the assists per game, the three-point shooting, that's all catching up too, and this has been a pretty slow development. This is his third season, and he's just now starting to get, fourth quarter minutes and play really solid, consistent rotation minutes for a team that's trying to win. But the wait has been worth it, and he's one of those guys, kind of the same way as like Dorian Finney-Smith, for example, where if you do trade them or if they do leave, you feel their presence as soon as they're gone. You're reminded of what you don't have. And, playing the last month or so without both of those guys, and then watching the Mavs defensive numbers just crater, and their three-point shooting numbers dipped a little bit too, it just reminds you of what Green gives this team. And now that he's getting more minutes and his production is going up along with it, that's the kind of thing that makes me think like he still has a whole lot more room to grow. There's a whole nother level that he can reach, or maybe even multiple levels. And, I'm hoping he's around here long enough for the Mavs to explore that, and then that we can all kind of see what he's capable of doing.
Bobby, you live with this basketball team, which makes you so valuable to us who follow the team. When you start to hear trade rumors, or Dallas has always put this in this situation, that situation, do you kind of laugh it off, or do you say, that does make sense if they were to try and do something like that?
Yes and no. I think the closer you are to it, the kind of the better understanding you realize of like what they have to trade, assets, other teams' perception of players on this roster. Fans might see Dwight Powell, who has had 2 really good games in a row.
It's a hell of a rebound he made last night on that missed free throw.
Absolutely. And, he's not the perfect center, and I'm not going to say he's the perfect center, but, I think as fans, sometimes if you only watch this one team, then you're going to really hyper-focus on all of the players' shortcomings, without maybe realizing, or maybe you're taking for granted their strengths. And so, like we just said with Josh Green, you don't really realize what you got in Josh Green or Maxi Kleber or Dorian Finney-Smith until they're gone. And you might not know what you're having in Dwight Powell until he's gone too. And so, I think sometimes people can lose sight of that. But at the same time, I feel like I have a really good understanding of where this team needs to improve. And I've been beating that drum forever. And I think it's just more versatile wings specifically, but more versatile defenders who can shoot the three. That's how the Mavs want to play. They want to have as much of a defensive presence on the floor as possible. They want to give Luka or Spencer Dinwiddie last night, who did a really good Luka impression, as much space as possible on offense to work. This season more than ever, though, I think the need has really been highlighted. Like, they need more guys that can put the ball on the floor and attack the basket. And I don't just mean like breaking down a defense. I mean, you get a kick-out pass from Luka or Dinwiddie driving the lane, you're in the corner, you got a guy closing out on you so you can't get that shot off. Well, what can you do? You can put the ball on the floor and get to the basket. Josh Green has been doing that. Dorian Finney-Smith has been doing that more, but they need one or two more guys that can do that. And so, while I do really feel like I have a really, intimate kind of understanding and appreciation for the players that are here, their needs are undeniable. And until they add a little bit more dynamicism to the offense, and until they get more of a defensive presence on the perimeter, they're still going to be losing some games that maybe they shouldn't. And hopefully, they can solve those needs, because, sooner or later, those losses are going to keep you out of the top six.
Bobby, I was listening to Chuck and Brad call the game. I was watching my college tape, but I was listening to them. They said something about the Mavs in clutch time have missed 36 field goals. Is that right or wrong? I don't mean to put you on the spot on that, but obviously when it comes to shooting free throws, especially at those critical times in the game, it just seems like it's hold on to your rear and hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, you think back to a lot of the games they've lost this season, and they've come down to free throws, whether it's in the final couple minutes or, an 0-for-3 trip early in the fourth quarter or an 0-for-2 back in the first. But, recent games, Luka gets fouled against the Wizards the other night with like 30 seconds left or something, and he missed one. Reggie Bullock missed one last night. Now, fortunately, Dwight Powell just hustled, outworked DeAndre Ayton and came away with that, which was fantastic. But, Bullock also had an 0-for-2 trip in Denver that would have sealed that game. And because he missed the second one, I think on purpose anyway, but, Denver would have had a shot to win that. Luka's missed some, Tim Hardaway's missed some, Dorian Finney-Smith has missed some. I mean, those will come back to bite you. The basketball gods are merciful, but if you test them too many times, eventually they're going to punish you. And unfortunately for the Mavs, they've just flown a little bit too close to the sun in that regard all season long. And, the trend still holds. When they shoot like below 70%, below 65% from the free throw line, they're not winning any of those games. You have to take advantage of those opportunities, especially in their case, because they don't take a lot of shots. They play at a very slow pace, but they also do take a lot of free throws. And so, if they have a bad night from the line, they're costing themselves 10 or 15 points. And in such a slow-paced game, those are immensely valuable points to just constantly be giving up because they can't knock these shots down.
It's Bobby Karalla, Mavs.com with you. Is Spencer Dinwiddie making a case that the team should just let him go by himself for even more extended stretches?
Man, he was awesome. He was awesome last night. And his scoring has been pretty good, for the last few weeks now. But Luka goes down 3 minutes into the game, and there's a difference between knowing you're playing without Luka, going into the game, versus suddenly being thrust into the Luka role. And that's what Dinwiddie was kind of thrust into. Last season he was awesome after the trade deadline, but he was always playing with either Luka or Jalen Brunson. This season he's playing with Luka a lot of the time, but like for half of his minutes, he's the only guy on the floor, and that's been kind of a weakness of this team. But he still has, done a very admirable job. He's averaging 16, 17 points per game, 40% from three, 5 assists. He does still have some, frustrating turnovers time and again. But, hey, who doesn't? a lot is asked of him, and he typically does not have somebody on the floor that can help him share the load, especially when he's piloting those second unit minutes. And so, he's risen to the occasion in a big way. And obviously, they scored 99 as a team last night. He had 36 of them. They do not win that game if he even has a good game. They needed him to be great. And like we just started talking about free throws, he missed a couple early in the game, and he knocked basically all of them down, from the first quarter on. And so, he's been nails in crunch time for most of his time with the Mavs, and last night was a continuation of that. And so, I do think, of course, they need another guy that can make plays, another guy that can run the offense. But Dinwiddie has shown, whether you're bringing him off the bench or whether you're starting him alongside Luka, he can deliver in those situations.
Bobby Karalla, Mavs.com, with us on 105.3 The Fan. Defensively, I know injuries have played a role in this, but with largely the same personnel from a group that was so good last year, what have you noticed, because you're so good with the X's and O's, as to why this team has struggled so much on the defensive side of the floor?
I think, the last month and a half-ish, playing without Kleber in particular, of course they were missing Green and Finney-Smith for a while in there too, but without Maxey, NBA teams are so afraid, and rightfully so, but they are so afraid of giving the other teams layups. Like, you will see teams do like borderline insane things on defense to keep a guy from laying it in. They'll pack the paint. They'll put all 5 defenders in the paint and just leave everybody open from three. Doesn't matter if you shoot 25% or 85% from three. They will leave you open to keep you from taking even a semi-contested layup. And, Maxey has been so good at blocking shots and contesting shots without fouling, just going up vertically. And Christian Wood was making progress in that regard too. But playing without Maxey for the last month or month and a half now, and playing without Wood for the last week or two, we're seeing Dallas take even more extreme measures to protect the rim. They can't protect the rim with height, with size, with length. And so they're just trying to park 3 or 4 guys right in front of the lane. Like, if you're putting the ball on the floor against the Mavs right now, you are going to see a swarm of players in front of you. And what that's done is, relatively speaking, limit the number of looks at the basket. But that is, relatively speaking, dramatically improved the number of wide open threes that opponents are getting against Dallas right now. You think back to that Washington game, the Wizards had 17 corner three-point attempts in that game. They made 10 of them, I think, which is a lot. So kudos to them. But, whenever the Mavs defense was working at its best, the corner three was the one shot that they never allowed. They never had to, because you just had Maxey at the rim or Wood at the rim waiting for the guy going to the basket, and you could erase that layup attempt just one-on-one. Now they cannot do that. So they're having to put 2 or 3 small guys at the basket, and then it's just a matter of flying around the perimeter, trying to rotate to close out on all these shooters, and you just simply cannot do that 100 times a game or 120 times a game. And so teams are unfortunately just getting too many open jump shots against them right now. And then the byproduct of living in rotation like they have been is nobody's really in position to box a guy out and get a defensive rebound, because they're too busy trying to cover 50 feet to get a hand in a shooter's face, and so there's been a lot of easy second chance points as a result of that. So I think it's like this twofold problem, but it all stems from not having the one guy, the one super tall, super athletic guy that can block shots at the rim. And so they're having to just do more extreme things to keep those layups from happening. And you got to give something up on defense. And the Mavs are unfortunately just giving up too many things right now in pursuit of limiting those shots at the rim.
When do you expect Kleber back?
Well, he said himself before the All-Star break, and, we're kind of running out of time before the All-Star break here. He's got about 2.5 weeks. So hopefully soon, the sooner the better, because their next, 10 of their next 11 games are against playoff teams. So, Maxey, I don't know what you're doing, man, but let's get you back on the floor ASAP.
Hey, Bobby, I was going to ask you, of going in the locker room and talking to players and stuff, it looks like with Kidd, he's pretty honest about his team and how they play on a nightly basis. Do players kind of whisper to you that, hey, that's a little rough, or, man, he's absolutely right about what he's saying and what we're doing?
I think they do realize that he's right. And one good thing about J. Kidd, a big departure from Rick Carlisle and from, Avery Johnson, many of the other coaches the Mavs have had over the years and around the league is, J-Kid is not going to let you know every single time you've made a mistake. He's pretty quiet. He'll let the players talk among themselves. He'll have his assistant coaches, Jared Dudley, Darrell Armstrong. These guys are gregarious. Sean Sweeney, he's not afraid to talk. But you're not going to hear from J-Kid every time you get yanked from a game. You know that he knows, and he knows that that you messed up, right? But he doesn't got to be on your butt about it, which I think makes the times that he does criticize them, it just makes it mean a little more, because he's not just constantly on their backs the way a guy like Tom Thibodeau is. Tibbs just always looks like he's in distress, which has got to kind of be draining as a player, right? But J-Kid, for better or worse, he just always kind of looks chill, always sort of looks zen. And so whenever he does speak up and say, look, if it's with this personnel, I don't know if we can be a good defense, because it seems like these guys are just happy out here scoring 120 and then hoping that the other team misses shots. I think in moments like that, his words carry a lot more weight, and, they might cut a little deeper as a result, but also, it's the first time he said something. He has your back. He expects better from you. He wants better and, hopes for better things from you. And so I think, maybe you're more willing to dig a little deeper the next time out because he said that thing. And to that point, the game after he criticized their defense, they allowed 90 to Miami. And so, clearly there is a pattern over the couple years he's been here where whenever he has been critical of the team, they've responded pretty quickly. And so I think they do respect him for that.
Bobby, trade deadline around the corner now. Is there anything right now that is interesting and possible to you?
Interesting, yes. Possible, I don't know. I mean, if you're looking for a real serious upgrade, I'm just not sure that they have the ammo. I'm kind of on team don't trade your future picks right now. Wait until the summer. But of course, that does kind of preclude you from trading for the really good players available. And I know a lot of fans might not want to hear that, but if you think the opposite, that's totally fine too. The best players on the market right now are going to cost you 1 or 2 first-round picks. And so if you pull that trigger today, you can't make another trade for like 7 years. So I'm just a little cautious about doing that right now. But I do think that there are marginal improvements they can make. Get one more guard, get one more shooter, get one more big. You might not be able to do all 3 of those things, but you might be able to do 1 or 2 of them. And if you do that, again, with as jam-packed as the West is right now, you don't need to get 5 or 8 wins better. You need to get like 2 wins better, and you could have home court again in the first round. The margins are so thin. So I think if you can make a logical, reasonable improvement, you'd be foolish not to do it. But I'm just a little uneasy about giving up those future picks right now.